On June 24th, the news was abuzz with the unexpected actions of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of a private militia that had been supporting the Russian military in Ukraine. What made this day particularly noteworthy was the fact that Prigozhin's forces on that fateful morning seized control of the Russian military headquarters in Rostov-on-Don, a Russian city. As the day progressed, Prigozhin's troops astonishingly turned their sights towards Moscow, the Russian capital, signaling a direct challenge to President Vladimir Putin. This turn of events was especially surprising because Prigozhin was considered a trusted political ally within Putin's inner circle, revealing an unprecedented threat from within. Putin had spent over 2 decades establishing an apparently impenetrable network of secret police, intelligence agencies, and military entities to safeguard his authority and eliminate potential challengers. One of these very individuals had emerged as a formidable opponent, leaving many to ponder the identity of those who sustained Putin's rule and what drove one of them to stage such a rebellion. The origin of this tale can be traced back to the Committee for State Security, better known as the KGB, the infamous intelligence agency of the Soviet Union. The KGB comprised a vast network for agents, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, with a dual mission: espionage abroad and surveillance within the Soviet Union. Their watchful eyes kept tabs on Soviet dissidents, media outlets, and even members of the ruling Communist Party, all in service of a single overarching objective: preserving the supremacy of the Soviet Union's top leadership. Notably, the KGB also maintained vigilance over the military, the other vital pillar upholding these leaders in their positions. By setting the KGB in opposition to the military, the Soviet leaders effectively held on to their power for decades, until the day when their dominion crumbled. With the downfall of the Soviet Union, the KGB met its demise, and the new Russian president, Boris Yeltsin, divided it into multiple smaller agencies, each assigned specific roles. These included the Federal Counterintelligence Service for Internal Security, the Foreign Intelligence Service for International Espionage, the Federal Protective Service for Presidential Protection, and various others responsible for tasks like border control, electronic surveillance, and maintaining Russia's covert underground bunkers. Enter the security services of Russia. In the tumultuous 1990s, these agencies were plagued by dysfunction and weakness. Meanwhile, the landscape was evolving, with emerging factions vying for power, rival politicians, and a new breed of immensely wealthy individuals known as oligarchs. These power struggles unfolded under the ailing Yeltsin. Amidst this chaotic backdrop, a young Vladimir Putin emerged at precisely the right moment, poised to seize the opportunities that lay ahead. In the 1980s, Putin served as a KGB officer in East Germany. During the 90s, he transitioned from a mid-level bureaucrat to the head of the FSK, later renamed the FSB. Subsequently, he assumed the role of heading Russia's Security Council, overseeing coordination with all of Russia's security services. He then became Yeltsin's prime minister. When Yeltsin abruptly resigned, the 47-year-old Putin was chosen as his successor. Upon assuming the presidency, Putin embarked on a mission to consolidate his power. He began by aligning with individuals he knew and trusted. The FSB, which closely resembled the old KGB, was brought directly under his command. He expanded its responsibilities and had it absorb other security services. This enabled him to take action against oligarchs who didn't pledge loyalty and investigate rival politicians. The FSB also fabricated charges against numerous human rights activists, journalists, and dissidents. These moves allowed Putin to amass power during the early 2000s. He subsequently elevated other security services to create an additional layer in the Russian state, alongside the military and the extensive Interior Ministry, or MVD. This process involved aligning Russia's numerous spies, police officers, and soldiers to secure his authority. In essence, he built a formidable wall of support that thwarted potential challengers. This strategic approach was facilitated by Putin's background within the KGB, providing him with insights into using security services to his advantage. Several members of these services, known as siloviki, were elevated into Putin's inner circle. Alongside trusted politicians and military leaders, they formed a close-knit group. These individuals were rewarded with power and wealth in exchange for their unwavering loyalty and subordination to Putin. Many of the influential figures in this inner circle had prior associations with Putin, such as Nikolai Patrushev, the head of the Security Council, who had collaborated with Putin in the KGB during the 1970s, as well as Alexander Bortnikov, head of the FSB, and Sergei Naryshkin, head of the SVR, who worked alongside Putin in the 90s. These key figures owed their positions to Putin, and they played an essential role in maintaining the unwavering support of security services and the military as Putin continued to eliminate potential rivals even into the 2010s. Putin's efforts to secure his position extended to the siloviki within his inner circle and beyond. His tactics revolved around competition and rivalry among these services. Putin assigned overlapping responsibilities to different security services, fostering a sense of competition for his favor. He also encouraged them to spy on each other. Frequent personnel purges were a common feature of this strategy. Those who appeared too ambitious were replaced with individuals perceived as less threatening and more loyal. This calculated approach ensured that no single faction could pose a significant threat to his power. With most challengers neutralized and potential threats within his inner circle, Putin has developed tactics to safeguard his regime against internal opposition. These measures, such as overlapping responsibilities, internal competition, and personnel purges, are designed to maintain his firm grip on power, thwarting any potential challenges that may emerge from within. To start, Putin has assigned overlapping responsibilities to the security services. For instance, the SVR, FSB, and military have all established units responsible for espionage in foreign nations. Additionally, Putin has established a new agency tasked with his personal protection, a role that was traditionally held by the FSO and MVD. He has set up a situation where these services must compete for his favor, and he even has them spying on each other, similar to practices from the Soviet era. The FSB, for example, deploys numerous agents within the military, and FSB agents are occasionally apprehended by their fellow agents. Furthermore, Putin frequently carries out personnel purges within these services. If an individual appears too ambitious, they are replaced with someone less threatening and more loyal. Even those within his inner circle are not immune to these purges. Putin's strategy intentionally fosters rivalry among the services and his close associates, ensuring that if one of them ever attempts to challenge his rule, the others will serve as a check on their ambitions. Therefore, it came as no surprise when Putin permitted the formation of a new group known as the Wagner militia, which emerged around 2014. Although technically illegal under Russian law, it swiftly became one of Putin's most valuable instruments for achieving his foreign objectives. Wagner played a pivotal role in the Russian military's invasion of Ukraine in 2014 and its involvement in the Syrian conflict starting in 2015. Additionally, Wagner operated in several other countries where Russia had strategic interests. Yevgeny Prigozhin was the individual in charge of Wagner. He was the entrepreneur who established multiple companies, one of which provided meals for the Kremlin, earning him Putin's attention. Prigozhin's criminal background in his early years, as well as his willingness to employ ruthless tactics to succeed, made him particularly appealing to Putin. However, the collaboration between Wagner and Russian military began to sour after Putin's ill-fated decision to order a full-scale air and ground assault on Ukraine. This invasion did not proceed as planned, with the Russian military failing to capture the capital Kiev and gaining control over only certain portions of eastern and southern Ukraine. These failures posed a significant threat to Putin's power, potentially eroding the confidence of his inner circle in his leadership and increasing the risk of internal challenges to his rule. In response, Putin resorted to his familiar playbook, arresting FSB leaders for providing inaccurate intelligence before the invasion and dismissing over 100 members of the National Guard, including its second-in-command, as well as several military generals. Nevertheless, these developments presented an opportunity for Prigozhin and Wagner to be portrayed as the competent alternative. Prigozhin expanded Wagner's ranks by enlisting individuals from Russian prisons and placed them at the forefront of critical battles in Ukraine, most notably in the town of Bakhmut. There, Wagner reportedly employed brutal tactics and suffered tens of thousands of casualties, but on May 20, 2023, they managed to capture the town. Wagner's success led to increased interaction with the Russian military, simultaneously elevating Prigozhin into Putin's inner circle, where he publicly criticized military leaders. Prigozhin's public statements went beyond what others could say in Russia. Surprisingly, Putin refrained from intervening to halt Prigozhin's actions because the conflict benefited him. He could manipulate the two sides, using each to limit the other's power and deflect some of the pressure away from himself. Consequently, Putin allowed the feud to escalate. In June 2023, Putin's military leaders retaliated by announcing the absorption of Wagner's troops, effectively cutting Prigozhin off from his source of wealth and access to Putin. To survive, Prigozhin rebelled on the June 23, 2023, as his forces advanced towards Moscow. Prigozhin claimed that he intended to remove only Russia's military leaders. Putin was compelled to publicly label Prigozhin a traitor on national television, exposing for the first time that he did not have total control and that the feuds he had nurtured among his subordinates were backfiring. This rebellion by someone close to Putin, whom he had trusted and granted significant autonomy, had a major impact. Just before reaching Moscow, Prigozhin agreed to surrender, but his rebellion revealed a larger issue for Putin. His security services appeared reluctant to prevent Wagner's mutiny, and many of his top military and security service leaders were notably absent. While there was evidence that some intelligence services were aware of Prigozhin's plans, it remained unclear why more decisive action was not taken to stop the advance. Initially, this incident demonstrated that Putin's stronghold on power might be weaker than ever before, until August 23, 2023. That day, Yevgeny Prigozhin died in a plane crash north of Moscow on August 23, 2023, with all 10 individuals on board losing their lives. Between the passengers were Prigozhin's right-hand man and co-founder of the Wagner Group, his bodyguards, and more key roles in the Wagner Group leadership. There's speculation that Prigozhin's death was not accidental, but rather orchestrated. Some U.S. officials and experts believe that the plane crash was the result of deliberate sabotage. The speculation is fueled further by Moscow's apparent lack of interest in thoroughly investigating the incident, as seen in actions such as moving large pieces of the fallen plane through rough terrain, which likely damaged recoverable evidence. The impact of Prigozhin's demise is seen as a short-term advantage for Russian President Vladimir Putin, as it presents an opportunity to consolidate power and manage internal rivalries. So again, Putin wins.